Some betrayals don't come with shouting or slammed doors. Some betrayals come quietly, like a parent turning off the porch light, knowing their child is still outside. This is one of those stories. And if you've ever felt like the invisible one in your own family, this one's for you. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to their family stories. Like the video if it moves you. And share your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. Now let me tell you what happened the night my parents chose my sister's dog over me. When my parents told me, "You need to go. Nicole's dog is anxious around you," I thought it was a bad joke. But they were dead serious. I stood in the living room with my suitcase still zipped shut, trying to decide whether to laugh or cry. Nicole's dog, a miniature schnauzer named Ollie, sat perched on the couch like royalty. My father wouldn't look me in the eye. My mother rubbed her temples and muttered, "We just want peace in the house." Samantha. Peace. That word had been weaponized my whole life. This was supposed to be my safe place. After 12 years working with battered women, the irony wasn't lost on me. I couldn't even find sanctuary in my own family. I'd just ended a 3-year relationship with a man who wanted kids but not the emotional mess I carried from childhood. I had nowhere else to go but here. I wasn't asking for much. Just a few weeks. A warm bed in my old room. A little compassion. But Nicole had already staked her claim. She had arrived the week before, unannounced as usual, complaining of burnout. "Work is killing me," she said, setting down 4 suitcases and a dog carrier like it was her birthright. No one questioned her, not even when she declared the house a quiet zone for Ollie's anxiety. She taped signs to doors. She rearranged the furniture. She even made my father put his favorite recliner in the garage because Ollie didn't like the smell of leather. And now, apparently, I didn't fit into Ollie's sensory world either. "You're always coming in with this energy," Nicole had said the night before, waving her wine glass like a wand. "It stresses him out." I'd laughed then, not because it was funny, but because I was stunned. My mother didn't laugh. She nodded. That was when I knew. I'd lost them. For years, I had convinced myself that if I just stayed kind, if I kept my voice soft and my visits short, they'd finally notice me. The daughter who showed up. Who called every week. Who handled the bills when dad had his stroke. Who drove mom to her mammograms. I thought love was something you earned if you were good enough. But Nicole didn't need to earn anything. She just had to show up with that dog and a handful of tears. And suddenly, the world rearranged itself around her. I slept in my car that night. Not out of pride. God knows I was too tired to be proud, but because there was nowhere else in the house for me. Nicole had claimed the guest room. The study was now Ollie's meditation den. And my childhood bedroom? My mother had turned it into storage. Boxes stacked where my bed used to be. I stared at the ceiling of my Corolla. The dome light flickering like it pitied me. Outside, the porch light stayed off. No one came out. In the morning, my father brought me a paper bag with toast and a thermos of coffee. He didn't say anything, just placed it on the hood of the car and walked back inside. The door clicked shut behind him. That was the moment I realized something important. They didn't choose the dog over me because of the dog. They chose comfort over confrontation. They chose the daughter who needed nothing from them except space and silence. And they told the daughter who needed love, "Go." I didn't go far, just parked at the edge of the old supermarket lot down the street, the one that used to have a bakery where mom would take us on Sundays. It's a dollar store now. Funny how things shrink over time. Dreams, places, people. The toast my father left me was dry. The coffee was lukewarm. I drank it anyway. I kept staring at the brown paper bag, thinking maybe it was some sort of peace offering. But it felt more like a farewell gift. Something you hand to a stranger who's leaving town. By 10 o'clock, I'd already called a few friends. Most of them had families of their own. Tight schedules, full houses. I wasn't angry, just embarrassed. 36 years old, sitting in my car like a runaway teen with nowhere to go. I'd spent my entire adult life helping women start over, and here I was, stuck with my own silence. I texted my mother once. Just one line. "I need to talk." No reply. Around noon, Nicole posted a photo of Ollie on Instagram. He was wrapped in one of the quilts Mom had sewn when we were kids. Captioned, "My little prince needs his rest. Visitors make him anxious, heartbreak paw." I stared at that post longer than I'd like to admit. I remembered the way Mom used to call me her little princess. She'd say it when she brushed my hair before school, when I'd bring home drawings from kindergarten. Then Nicole came along, colicky, fussy, loud. Everything in the house began to orbit around her moods. Dad used to joke, "Well, at least Sam can take care of herself." I wore that like a badge at first. Until I realized it wasn't admiration, it was dismissal. I ended up booking a room at a cheap roadside motel that smelled like bleach and old cigarettes. The walls were thin, and I could hear a man coughing through the vents all night. I lay there, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling fan as it clicked unevenly. I thought about calling my ex. Just to hear a voice that once loved me. Even if imperfectly. But I didn't. 3 days passed. No one called. Not even to ask if I was okay. On the 4th day, I drove back by the house. I didn't stop. I just watched from the corner. The front lawn was neat. Nicole had set out one of those fake fire hydrants by the rose bushes. The kind people used to encourage dogs not to mark certain spots. I guess Ollie had claimed that, too. I kept waiting for someone to come out. For my father to spot me and wave me in. For my mother to open the door like she used to when I came home from college. Arms outstretched. But nothing happened. The next week, I took a job offer 2 towns over. A new shelter was opening. And they needed a lead coordinator. It wasn't a glamorous role. But it gave me a reason to stand up in the morning. I signed a 6-month lease on a modest 1-bedroom above a florist's shop. The landlady was 72. Hard of hearing, but sweet as pie. She left me a welcome basket with lavender soap and oatmeal cookies. For the first time in years, I had a space that was mine. But even in that quiet apartment, I still checked my phone. I still looked for signs that someone noticed I was gone. One night, about 2 months later, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. The voice was shaky. It was Mrs. Conway, the neighbor who used to bring over rhubarb pie every 4th of July. "Samantha," she said. I wasn't sure who else to call. "There was an ambulance. Your father looked pale. And your mother didn't answer the door for over an hour. Nicole's car hasn't been here for weeks." My stomach dropped. I didn't ask questions. I just thanked her, hung up, and stared at the phone like it was made of lead. That night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, I got in the car and drove home. I didn't call ahead. Didn't warn them I was coming. I didn't even know if they were still at the hospital. Or if they were home recovering. All I knew was that I couldn't ignore that call from Mrs. Conway. Not when it was the first real sliver of truth I'd heard from that house in months. The street looked the same. But the air felt heavier. The maple tree in front of the house had dropped most of its leaves. They scattered across the driveway like they'd been waiting for someone to sweep them up. Nicole's car wasn't there. I knocked once. Then let myself in. The house smelled different, mustier. Stale. Like no one had opened a window in weeks. My mother was sitting in her recliner. Bundled in a cardigan she used to wear when she worked in the school library. Her glasses were low on her nose. And she didn't look up right away. My father was on the couch. Thinner than I remembered. A box of tissues sat between them. Both looked smaller, diminished, like the house had started to absorb them. "Samantha," my mother said, voice rasping. "We didn't know you were coming." I shrugged. "Didn't think you wanted me to." They didn't argue. I sat down across from them. Arms folded, trying not to scan the room like I always used to, checking for signs of Nicole. Her purse on the table. Her shoes by the door. But there was nothing. No Ollie. No chewed up toys. No sound. My father cleared his throat. Nicole had to leave town. Business trip. She said she'd be back last week. My mother added, eyes on the carpet. She leave a note? No. My father said. Just packed up. Took the dog to a boarding place. Said it was better for him to be away from the chaos. I let that word hang in the air, chaos. Funny. That's what I'd apparently brought with me. All those months ago. And now? This was quiet. Too quiet. I spent the rest of the afternoon taking stock. The fridge was nearly empty. Bills had piled up unopened on the kitchen counter. The guest room was in disarray. My father's medication organizer hadn't been filled in over a week. They weren't fine. They hadn't been fine for a while. I called the pharmacy, refilled prescriptions, made a grocery list, reconnected with the old nurse who used to check on Dad after his stroke. I didn't ask for thanks. Just did what needed to be done. Like I always had. That night, I made a simple stew. We ate in silence, the sound of spoons scraping against bowls louder than the conversation. My mother said, "We didn't think you'd want to come back." I looked up from my food. Why would I? She didn't answer. And for once, I didn't fill the silence for her. I stayed 3 days, scheduled doctor's appointments, fixed a leaking faucet, made sure their house was livable again. But I didn't unpack. I didn't sleep in the guest room. I didn't slip back into the role they were used to me playing. On the last day, I left a folder on the dining table, names of local caregivers, cleaning services, grocery delivery. I told them someone would be checking in the following week. "You're not staying?" my father asked. I shook my head. "I have a home now. A life. You made it clear I wasn't welcome in this one." My mother opened her mouth. But I held up my hand. Not in anger, just tiredness. "I'm not here to punish anyone," I said quietly, "but I won't let you forget what you did. Either." And I walked out the door. They didn't follow me. They never did. Then she texted. "Heard you visited. Hope everything's okay. I'm on my way back next week. Let's talk?" I stared at the message for a long time. There was no apology, no explanation, just that same breezy tone she used for everything. As if we were still kids sharing cereal in the morning. Not two grown women on opposite ends of a family war. I didn't answer. Back in my apartment, life settled into something steady. Mornings were quiet. I learned how to enjoy solitude without letting it cut too deep. The flower shop downstairs always smelled like lilacs. Even in winter, every Tuesday, the landlady slipped coupons under my door for the diner around the corner. A small kindness, but it mattered. At the shelter, one of the younger women asked me one afternoon, "How do you stay so calm with all the yelling and chaos around here?" I smiled, but it felt hollow, because the truth was, I grew up in it. Only, in our house, the yelling was replaced with silence. And the chaos? It came in the form of cold shoulders and closed doors. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the home health nurse I'd arranged for my parents. "They're stable," she said, "but something's off. They keep asking when Nicole's coming back. But it's been over a month. They're starting to get confused about the days. Might be worth a visit soon." I said I'd think about it. But I already knew I wouldn't go. I'd done what I could. More than they deserved, maybe. And while the guilt still came in waves, usually in the early morning when the world was still half asleep, I knew better than to swim back into a storm I'd barely escaped. Then came the letter. An actual, handwritten letter, postmarked from Oregon, from Nicole. "Sam, I don't expect you to forgive me. I wouldn't if I were you." I panicked. I felt trapped and overwhelmed. I didn't know how to handle Mom and Dad getting old. I figured you'd show up eventually and clean it all up like you always do. "I'm sorry. That's the truth. I'm sorry I left them when they needed help. I'm sorry I pushed you out. I guess part of me always knew you were the better daughter. I just hated how that made me feel." I read it 3 times. Then I folded it neatly and placed it in the back of my kitchen drawer, next to the batteries and takeout menus. I didn't know what to do with it. Acknowledge it? Burn it? Frame it? Instead, I made tea, sat by the window, let the winter sun warm my face and thought about how long I'd waited to hear something, anything, that resembled the truth. But it didn't change things. A confession, no matter how honest, isn't the same as repair. A few days later, I got another call. This time, it was from Mom. "I just wanted to say," she said softly, "thank you for what you did when you came. The nurse is nice. She made soup." "That's good," I said, keeping my voice even. Long pause. "Nicole wrote us too. She said she might not be back for a while." I didn't reply. There was nothing to say. "You were always steady," she added, almost to herself. "Always knew what needed doing." I should have told you that more often. I let that sit, like old dust on forgotten furniture. I hope you're happy where you are. She finished. I am, I said. I really am. And I meant it. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for someone else to open the door. I'd found one of my own. It snowed the following weekend. The kind of snow that quiets everything, soft, slow, like the sky is trying to hush the world for a moment. I walked to the diner with my scarf pulled high and boots crunching through the frost. The waitress there knew my name now. Brought me tea before I asked. Called me, hun, in a way that didn't feel condescending. Just warm, easy. I used to think healing came in big waves, like a dramatic moment of realization. But it doesn't. Not really. It's small. It's forgetting to check your phone for their messages. It's going a whole day without rehearsing what you should have said. It's sitting in a booth with scrambled eggs and not feeling the ache of being unwanted. Still, on some nights, the memories crawled in. The night I turned 16 and Nicole threw a tantrum because my birthday cake had strawberries. She hated strawberries. Mom scraped them off with a spoon, saying, "Let's just keep the peace." Or the time I got into college and Dad said, "That's great, Sam, but let's wait until Nicole gets her SAT scores before we plan anything." Or when I told them I wanted to work in social services. And Nicole laughed and said, "So basically you want to stay poor?" And no one corrected her. These things don't vanish. They just settle deeper, like old roots. I didn't reply to Mom's message. I didn't write back to Nicole. But I didn't block them either. I suppose there's a difference between closing the door and locking it. At the shelter, one of the women, Anna, had a breakdown. She kept muttering, "They chose him. They always chose him." I sat with her in the hallway, holding her hand as she sobbed. And somewhere deep in my chest, something loosened. We are not just our pain, but we carry echoes of it. Afterward, I walked back to my office and stared at the photo on my desk, me and the team from our opening day. I looked tired in that picture, but strong. There was a steadiness in my eyes I'd never seen before. That night, I lit a candle, not for any special reason, just to mark something. I wasn't sure what yet, but I knew it mattered. Then the phone rang. My heart jumped the way it always did when I saw their number. I thought about letting it ring, letting it fade into voicemail and silence. But I answered. "Samantha?" My father's voice was thinner than before. "I'm here. We got the paperwork from the lawyer." I waited. "We're updating the will. Just wanted to be transparent." I said nothing, just listened. "We're leaving the house to both of you. You and Nicole, 50-50. My throat tightened, not because of the house. I didn't want the house. I hadn't wanted it for years. But because even now, after everything, they were still splitting it down the middle. As if the scales had ever been balanced. "I see," I said. "I know it's not enough. But it's something." There was a long pause. Then he added, "You were right. About everything." The line stayed quiet after that. We didn't hang up. We just listened to each other breathe for a while. And that silence, for once, didn't feel like punishment. It felt like something was starting to thaw. I didn't respond to the will conversation right away. I needed space to feel what I felt. Not just react. That's something I've learned over time. Sometimes, the real courage isn't in confronting people. It's in not letting their choices steer your worth. A week later, Nicole showed up at my apartment. No warning, no call, just her standing in the hallway, hugging herself like she expected to be turned away. I opened the door, but only just enough to lean against it. "Hey," she said softly, "can we talk?" Her eyes looked tired, less polished than I remembered. Her hair was pulled into a loose bun. Her mascara smudged at the edges. She looked human, for once. "I didn't think you'd come here." I said. "I didn't either," she replied, "but I didn't know where else to go." I stepped aside. We sat at my tiny kitchen table, the one I'd thrifted from a yard sale down the street. She traced a finger over a water stain in the wood, like she was trying to find a way into the conversation. "I'm not good at this," she said after a while. "I've always just sort of assumed things would be okay." I nodded, not saying anything. "I didn't mean to push you out," she continued. "With the dog, With mom and dad, I needed things a certain way. And I knew they'd go along with it if I asked. That's what scared me, I think. That they never made me earn it. I let the words settle. Let the quiet speak, too. You know, I said, when they told me to leave. It wasn't about the dog. It wasn't even about you. It was about what they'd always done. Choosing what was easier to love. She flinched a little. I know. I took a breath. I don't need them to rewrite the past. I've stopped hoping for that. But I do need to protect what little piece I've built. Nicole looked up at me then. Eyes glassy. I get that. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she said, I don't expect us to be close. But I'd like to, at least not be strangers. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure how I felt. I still had the letter she'd sent. Folded and hidden. This wasn't a fairy tale moment. There were no hugs. No tears. Just two grown women sitting across from each other. Realizing the space between them had grown not from one betrayal, but from years of small, steady neglect. You'll need to earn that, I said, gently. She nodded. After she left, I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window. Watched a kid across the street toss snow into the air like confetti. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like that forgotten daughter waiting on the porch. I felt like someone who had survived the storm and built something warm out of the wreckage. That night, my mother called, just to say hello. No guilt, no apologies, just a normal, human hello. And that, somehow, meant more than anything. Spring came slowly that year. In Ohio, the seasons don't change overnight. The snow lingers like an old argument no one wants to resolve. But then, one morning, you catch the scent of damp earth and hear birds again. And something in your chest loosens without warning. I spent a Saturday cleaning my apartment from top to bottom. Not because it needed it, but because something inside me did. I scrubbed baseboards, sorted through drawers, folded clothes I'd been ignoring. When I reached the back of the kitchen drawer, the one where I kept Nicole's letter, I paused. I opened it again. Read her words in the quiet of my home. It no longer made me angry. It didn't hurt the way it used to. It just felt distant, like an echo from another life. I folded it once more. Not with bitterness this time, but with finality. I didn't throw it away. I didn't need to. It no longer held power over me. A week later, my father called, said he and mom had been thinking about downsizing. We're getting older, he said. House is too big. I nodded into the phone. Makes sense. He hesitated. Would you help us look at options? You don't have to say yes. Just, if you have time. And for a moment, I felt something strange. Not obligation, not guilt, just choice. They were finally asking, not expecting. It was a different kind of request, one I could say yes to. Or no to, and still be whole either way. I'll think about it, I said, and I meant that. At work, I was promoted, director of programming. I sat through meetings with city officials. Negotiated budgets, designed new outreach programs. It was exhausting, but I was good at it. I walked into rooms now without shrinking. I spoke without rehearsing what others needed to hear. One evening, after a long day, I walked past the mirror in the hallway and stopped. Not to check my hair or smooth my clothes. Just to look. I barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because she looked different, but because she felt intact. Not perfect. Not healed all the way, but real. And that was enough. Later that month, I drove by the old house one last time. I didn't stop, just slowed down enough to see the porch light was on. A soft yellow glow, steady against the dark. It didn't stir longing, just memory. They had chosen the dog over me. Yes. But more than that, they had chosen comfort over conflict. Familiarity over fairness. Quiet over truth. For years, I'd made that my burden. I'd begged for a seat at a table I had helped set. But not anymore. I had my own table now. My own peace. My own voice. And if I ever chose to open that door again, it would be on my terms. They chose a dog over their daughter. I chose peace over pain. And finally, after 36 long years, that choice was mine to make.